So the first question was related to hiring and just, what does your hiring process look like? Who do you hire? How do you know you've made the right choice, etc. How do I know I've made the right choice? I don't. Nobody ever knows that, right? That's really difficult. In terms of what our hiring process looks like, believe it or not, it's fairly casual. It's funny. There's a pre-COVID and a post-COVID way to interview people, right? But the pre-COVID way is that I always took instructor therapists or potential instructor therapists, and I would put them with kids and I would just have them play. And that was one of the very, very first things I did in an interview, because I really wanted to see if they could play with kids. People could have like long resumes, but not be fun, right? And me doing this for so long, you can't teach fun. I'm not sure why, but you can't teach enthusiasm and you can't seem to teach fun. So, that's really what I want to get a sense of. Now we're doing interviews via Zoom. It's a lot tougher. And I do have to say, I don't get a lot of staff turnover. So thank goodness I haven't had to do a lot of interviews. We have had a couple. One of our members who we just interviewed, she was a friend of a friend. So we were able to get a bit of a background before we even interviewed her. But again, like if there's some type of game you can play via Zoom, or just even asking some questions and seeing how, their answers are they, yeah, uh-huh, yeah, one word answers, or are they more enthusiastic? And that's really what you want to get a sense of, is not necessarily the experience, but their enthusiasm. Now, if you're interviewing for a different position, like a BCBA position, obviously, you're going to need more than just enthusiasm. You're going to need knowledge as well. But the question was more related to hiring instructor therapists, or hiring, a paraprofessional, etc.
I'll sometimes give them like a pretty typical scenario that they would encounter in the job that I'm hiring them for. So if they're, working in a group, I might say like, well, what would you do if the student has a really hard time sitting at circle time? Like, and it's your job to support them. Like, what would you do? And kind of hearing what they have to say. So coming up with those scenarios. I also just tend to judge based on just how I feel. Sometimes it's like they could give all the right answers and it just doesn't like feel great.
You're a behavior analyst. You base things on how you feel? Really?
Yeah, there's no systematic way to analyze that situation. But yeah, sometimes it's just more getting a feel for the person, having the conversations. Sometimes my staff joke, because like if I'm interviewing, sometimes it'll be done in like 6 minutes and they're like, I guess that was a bad one. Like, yeah, like sometimes you just know, and like I can't maintain the conversation beyond that. But if it's good, like you can keep it going, like sometimes they'll just talk about things that are relevant to like stuff that would apply to the job. So like it just becomes a conversation, and those are the ones that I tend to want to hire more.
Sometimes you can give them a basic instruction and see if they can follow it. It sounds really super simple. But for instance, we'll do something like an imitation drill, and I'll say, okay, Shira, I'm going to teach you, whatever, copying. Okay, Shira, do this. Okay, do this, do this. Okay, now your turn. You try as an instructor therapist. If the instructor therapist comes back and says, okay, touch your nose, touch your head, it's fine. They've never taught before. But then you say, okay, I'm going to give you some feedback. Instead of saying touch your head, say do this. Say do this. Model it for them, etc. And then they go back and they go, touch your head, touch your nose. I just said do this. In an interview, I say, okay, great, thanks for your time, bye. And that's your 6 minutes, right? So again, seeing if you can give them a task where they can take a little bit of feedback. And if they can take feedback, great. Going back to Shira's, you get a feeling for them. Okay, Shira. Okay, but you do have to work with them long term, right? So if you're not jiving with their personality in an interview, they might be nervous. But
I'll always hire personality over skill, because I think that skill can be taught and personality can't.
Yeah, it's true.